The emergency meeting room on Coalition Station Omega buzzed with desperate voices. Representatives from 12 different alien species crowded around a holographic star map. Red zones spreading like infection across entire sectors. Commander Vexitar slammed his four-clawed hands on the table. His reptilian scales had turned pale gray, a sure sign of stress among his people. 3 more systems fell yesterday. The Zephyrian bioweapons are killing our medics faster than we can train new ones. Dr. Zillanth's tentacles writhed in agitation. The chief medical officer had seen too many of her best healers die horrible deaths. Our technology is useless against these toxins. They adapt faster than our scanners can analyze them. Every treatment we try makes the next variant stronger. The hologram showed the latest casualty reports. Entire medical corps wiped out. Hospitals abandoned. Worlds quarantined because no one could treat the survivors. "We need intelligence," said Admiral Korth, his insect-like mandibles clicking nervously. "Someone has to get close to their bioweapons. Study them. Find a weakness." "It's a suicide mission," Vexitar replied bluntly. "Whoever goes won't come back. The longest any scout has survived on a plague world is 6 hours." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. They needed someone expendable. "What about the humans?" suggested Dr. Zillanth. "They're new to the coalition, haven't contributed much to the war effort." Several aliens nodded. Earth was the newest member species, barely 50 years in the galactic community. Their technology was primitive, their military small and untested. "Send them a request," Vexitar decided. "Tell them we need their weakest soldier, someone who won't be missed if things go wrong." The message went out that day. The coalition's request was brutally honest. "Send us someone expendable for reconnaissance on plague worlds. Combat skills irrelevant, survival unlikely. Need volunteer immediately." Earth's response came back within hours. A single name and file. Vexitar stared at the human's photo on his screen. The creature looked like a child. Short, thin, with dark hair and gentle brown eyes behind thick glasses. The military uniform seemed too big for his small frame. "Corporal Marcus Chen," Vexitar read aloud. "Height 5 feet 7 inches. Weight 140 pounds. Failed basic combat training twice. Never fired weapon in combat. Medical specialist." Dr. Zillanth laughed, a sound like bubbling water. "This is their soldier? He looks like he'd faint at the sight of blood." The file continued. Marcus had terrible marksmanship scores. His physical fitness ratings were the lowest acceptable for military service. His combat assessments all marked him as unsuitable for frontline duty. But then Vexitar found something strange. 200 confirmed saves, he read slowly. Disaster response specialist. Served in earthquake zones, flood areas, plague outbreaks. Never lost a patient once he reached them. "Impossible," Dr. Zillanth said. "No medic has a perfect save rate." Vexitar scrolled through Marcus's service record. Earthquake in South America. Pulled 37 people from collapsed buildings. Tsunami in the Pacific. Worked for 72 hours straight treating survivors. Plague outbreak in Central Africa. Went in when everyone else evacuated. Every mission was the same pattern. Marcus would arrive at disasters that other medics couldn't handle. Places too dangerous, too hopeless, too far gone. And somehow everyone he treated lived. "Maybe humans are naturally immune to bioweapons," suggested Admiral Korth. "Or maybe they're too primitive to be worth targeting," added another voice. The transport ship arrived at Coalition Station Omega 3 days later. Vexitar went to the docking bay to meet Earth's contribution to their war effort. He expected a delegation, maybe a small military escort. Instead, one human walked down the ramp alone. Marcus Chen looked even smaller in person. He carried a massive backpack that seemed twice his size, and a medical kit that appeared to contain more supplies than should physically fit inside it. His uniform was perfectly clean and pressed, but his boots were old and worn from countless deployments. He approached Vexitar and saluted awkwardly. "Corporal Chen reporting for duty, sir." Vexitar studied the human. Up close, Marcus looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands showed small scars from years of medical work. But his voice was steady and calm. "You understand this is a suicide mission?" Vexitar asked bluntly. Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." They explained the situation. "You could die horribly. These bioweapons cause pain beyond anything your species has experienced." "I understand, sir." Vexitar felt confused. This human showed no fear, no bravado, just quiet acceptance. Why did they send you? Your file says you can barely hold a weapon. Marcus adjusted his medical kit strap. Because I'm not here to fight, sir. I'm here to help. Help with what? Intelligence gathering? You won't live long enough to report back. Help with healing, sir. That's what I do. Dr. Zillanth arrived at the docking bay, curious to see the famous human medic. She looked Marcus up and down with her multiple eyes, tentacles twitching with amusement. This is your great healer? She asked Vextar. He's smaller than my medical students. Marcus turned to face her. Ma'am, I've read your published papers on coalition medical procedures. Your work on quantum cellular repair is impressive. Dr. Zillanth paused, surprised. Few beings outside her species had read her technical writings. You understand quantum medicine? Some of it, ma'am. Though I work with simpler methods. Simpler how? Marcus opened his medical kit. Inside, Vextar saw equipment that looked ancient by coalition standards. Cloth bandages instead of healing fields, metal instruments instead of laser scalpels, glass bottles filled with colored liquids instead of synthesized medications. I use what works, Marcus said simply. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Dr. Zillanth's tentacles curled in disgust. Primitive tools for primitive medicine. How do you possibly achieve a perfect save rate with such crude equipment? Marcus closed his kit gently. I don't try to cure everything, ma'am. I just try to help people feel better while their bodies heal themselves. Bodies don't heal from bioweapons, she snapped. They're specifically designed to prevent natural recovery. Then maybe we need to try something the weapons weren't designed to handle, Marcus replied quietly. The briefing room was filled with coalition medical experts. They showed Marcus recordings of bioweapon effects, analyzed tissue samples, displayed treatment failure statistics. Every chart and graph told the same story: hopelessness. Marcus listened without taking notes. He asked simple questions that the experts found almost insulting. What do the patients say hurts most? Do they feel scared? Are they alone when it happens? We don't focus on emotional responses, Dr. Zillanth explained impatiently. We treat the physical symptoms. But if someone's scared, their body handles pain differently, Marcus said. If they feel alone, they give up faster. Emotional states don't affect bioweapon progression, another expert argued. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, maybe they should. The next morning, Marcus prepared for deployment to Kepler 442b, the latest plague world. Coalition Command expected him to survive maybe 6 hours, long enough to collect some samples and send back basic observations. As he checked his equipment one final time, Vextar approached him. Last chance to back out, human. Marcus looked up from his medical supplies. Sir, I've never backed out of helping someone who needed it. I'm not starting now, even if you can't save them. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Sir, saving isn't always about curing. Sometimes it's just about making sure nobody dies alone and scared. The transport dropped him on the surface of a dead world. As Marcus watched the ship disappear into space, he shouldered his oversized pack and walked toward the Coleman base where coalition survivors waited for a miracle they didn't believe could come. Behind him, his footprints marked the first hopeful steps anyone had taken on this planet in months. The Coleman base looked like a graveyard. Marcus approached the main entrance slowly, his heavy medical pack making soft sounds with each step. The metal walls were stained with something that might have been blood, though it came in colors he'd never seen before. His radio crackled with static. Corporal Chen, this is Coalition Command. Do you copy? I copy, Command. Approaching the base now. Sensors show 17 life signs inside, all showing bioweapon contamination. Proceed with extreme caution. Marcus stopped at the door and took a deep breath. Through his thick glasses, he could see movement inside through a broken window, shapes that might have been people lying on makeshift beds. Command, permission to enter without protective gear. Static filled the radio for several seconds. Negative, Corporal. The air itself is contaminated. You'll be dead in minutes. Marcus looked at his pack. He had protective equipment, but it would make treating patients nearly impossible. The thick gloves would prevent him from feeling for pulse points or examining wounds properly. Command, I'm going in clean. Corporal, that's suicide. Marcus turned off his radio and pushed open the door. The smell hit him first. It was wrong in every way possible, like flowers mixed with decay and something chemical that made his eyes water. But underneath it all was something familiar. the smell of people in pain. The main room had been turned into a medical ward. Creatures from 6 different species lay on stretched-out blankets and torn pieces of metal sheeting. Some were moaning softly. Others lay perfectly still, staring at nothing. A Vorthan soldier near the door tried to sit up when Marcus entered. His crystalline body structure was cloudy instead of clear, and pieces kept flaking off like broken glass. "Human," the soldier whispered in heavily accented standard. "You should not be here. The air, it kills." Marcus knelt beside him, setting down his medical pack. "I'm here to help. What's your name?" "Jexitar. I was communications specialist." The Vorthan's voice was getting weaker. "I have been dying for 4 days now." Marcus opened his pack and pulled out a simple metal instrument that looked like a tuning fork. He held it against different parts of Jexitar's crystalline chest, listening to the sounds it made. "Interesting," Marcus murmured. He reached for a glass bottle filled with clear liquid and poured some onto a cloth bandage. "This might sting a little." He began cleaning the areas where Jexitar's crystal structure was flaking away. The Vorthan gasped in surprise. "The pain, it is less." Marcus nodded, continuing his work. "Bioweapons are designed to cause maximum suffering, but sometimes simple cleaning helps. Your body is trying to heal, but the weapon residue keeps reinfecting the wounds." Across the room, a reptilian saurid female raised her head. "Human, what are you doing?" "We have tried everything. Our medical equipment shows no improvement." Marcus looked at the corner where Coalition medical devices sat silent and dark. Advanced scanners, healing pods, energy-based treatment systems, all of them shut down because they couldn't process the bioweapon effects. "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus said quietly. He finished treating Jexitar and moved to the next patient, a furry canid male whose breathing was labored and uneven. The saurid female watched as Marcus pulled out more simple tools. A wooden stick for checking throats, a metal disc for listening to heartbeats, cloth strips for checking circulation. "You use primitive tools," she observed. "I use tools that work," Marcus corrected gently. He was examining the canid's eyes with a small flashlight. "What's your name?" "Dr. Sethka." Was the medical officer for this base." Marcus looked up from his patient. "You're still the medical officer. Being sick doesn't change who you are." Dr. Sethka's scaled face showed confusion. "But I cannot heal anyone. I am failing as a doctor. You kept everyone alive until I got here." "That's not failing." Marcus continued working through the night. He moved from patient to patient using methods that seemed impossibly basic. For the canid with breathing problems, he mixed a tea from plants in his pack that helped open airways. For a crystalline being whose structure was dissolving, he created a mineral solution that slowed the decay. Most importantly, he talked to each patient. He learned their names, their jobs, their fears. He sat with them when they were scared and held their hands when the pain got bad. "How are you not dying?" Dr. Sethka asked as dawn approached. "The bioweapons should have killed you hours ago." Marcus was treating a young insectoid whose carapace was cracking and leaking fluid. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because I'm not trying to fight the weapons directly." "What do you mean?" "Your medical technology tries to cure everything immediately. It fights the bioweapons head-on, but these weapons were designed to defeat that approach. They get stronger when they're attacked directly." Marcus applied a paste made from mixed chemicals to the insectoid's cracks. "I'm not trying to cure anyone. I'm just treating symptoms, making people comfortable, helping their bodies do what they naturally want to do anyway." By morning, something impossible had happened. Not only was Marcus still alive, but his patients were showing improvement. Small improvements, but real ones. Jexitar's crystalline structure had stopped flaking. The canid male's breathing was easier. The insectoid's carapace had stopped cracking. Dr. Sethka used one of the working scanners to check the readings. "This is impossible. The bioweapon concentrations should be increasing, not decreasing." Marcus was mixing another batch of his simple medicine. Maybe the weapons don't know how to adapt to treatments they weren't designed to counter. "What treatments?" "Kindness," Marcus said simply. "Patience. Treating the whole person, not just the disease." That afternoon, Marcus's radio crackled back to life. He had forgotten to turn it back on, but Dr. Sethka had activated the base communications. "Corporal Chen, this is Coalition Command. Report your status immediately." Dr. Sethka took the radio. "Command, this is Dr. Sethka at Coleman Base. Corporal Chen has been working for 18 hours straight. 17 patients are showing improvement. Long silence from the radio. Doctor, please repeat. Did you say improvement? Confirmed, Command. The human has achieved results we thought impossible. Marcus looked up from treating a patient's infected wound with honey from his medical kit. Command, this is Chen. The bioweapons are adaptable, but they're designed to counter advanced medical technology. They're not prepared for basic field medicine. Corporal, you've been exposed to lethal concentrations of bioweapons for over 20 hours. How are you still alive? Marcus thought about that. I think it's because I'm not trying to defeat them, sir. I'm just trying to help people feel better while their bodies heal naturally. The weapons don't seem to know how to respond to that approach. Corporal, coalition medical teams across the galaxy have been trying to solve this problem for months. Are you saying the solution is being nice to patients? Marcus looked around the room at his patients. Jextar was sitting up for the first time in days. Dr. Sethka was helping other patients eat solid food. The insectoid was making clicking sounds that seemed happy. I'm saying the solution is treating people like people, sir, not just treating their diseases. That evening, as Marcus continued his work, he noticed something else. His patients were starting to help each other. Jextar was sharing his water ration with weaker patients. Dr. Sethka was teaching others basic care techniques. The candid male was telling jokes to keep spirits up. They're healing emotionally too, Marcus realized. That's helping their bodies fight the weapons. By the end of his second day on the Plague World, Marcus had logged his first alien saves. Patients who had been dying for weeks were now sitting up, talking, even laughing. But as he prepared for sleep, his radio brought disturbing news. Corporal Chen, this is Command. Long-range sensors detect Zephyrian ships approaching your location. You have approximately 12 hours before they arrive. Marcus looked at his patients. They were better, but not well enough to evacuate or fight. Understood, Command. We'll be ready. Dr. Sethka overheard the transmission. Ready for what? We cannot fight. We can barely walk. Marcus was organizing his medical supplies for what might be their last day. We'll be ready to help whoever needs it most. The third day on Kepler 442b began with Marcus teaching his patients how to help themselves. He showed Dr. Sethka how to mix his simple medicines. He taught Jextar how to check other patients for signs of improvement. Everyone who could move was given small tasks to help the group. Why are you teaching us this? Asked the insectoid, whose name was Clicktar. Are you leaving? Marcus was checking the wounds of a humanoid patient, whose blue skin was slowly returning to its normal color. I'm not planning to leave, but if something happens to me, you all need to know how to take care of each other. The patients exchanged worried looks. They had heard the radio transmission about approaching Zephyrian ships. Human Marcus, said Jextar, his crystalline voice stronger now. You have saved us all. You should escape while you can. Marcus smiled and shook his head. I don't leave patients behind. That's not what medics do. As morning progressed, Marcus noticed something interesting in how the bioweapons worked. Coalition medical records showed that the toxins attacked differently based on each species' biology, but they all had one thing in common. They targeted the patient's sense of hope. The weapons don't just attack bodies, Marcus explained to Dr. Sethka as they worked together. They attack the will to live. They make patients feel hopeless, alone, forgotten. Dr. Sethka's scales had regained much of their healthy green color. That would explain why our technology failed. We focused on treating physical symptoms while ignoring psychological ones. Exactly. But when patients feel cared for, when they have hope and purpose, their bodies fight back harder against the toxins. Marcus had started a simple routine with each patient. Every morning, he would sit with them individually and ask about their lives before the war. Their families, their hobbies, their dreams for after the fighting ended. He would listen to their stories and help them remember who they were beyond just being victims. You are making them remember they are people, not just patients, Dr. Sethka observed. People heal better than patients do, Marcus replied. By midday, the base had transformed. Patients were talking to each other, sharing meals, even attempting to repair some of the damaged equipment. The Saurid engineer Hesra was teaching others how to fix communication devices. The Canid soldier, Brocktar, was organizing guard schedules even though they had no real weapons. Marcus watched this with growing understanding. The bioweapons were designed to isolate victims. When people work together and support each other, the weapons lose their psychological power. His radio crackled with an urgent message from Coalition Command. Corporal Chen, Zephyrian ships will reach your position in 4 hours. Evacuation transport is standing by, but can only take 5 passengers maximum. Marcus looked around at his 17 patients. All were improving, but several still needed constant care. Command, we need transport for 18 people. Negative, Corporal. Transport can handle 5 plus you. You need to choose who to save. The radio went silent. Marcus stared at the device, then at his patients who had all heard the transmission. You must choose the ones most likely to survive, Dr. Sethka said quietly. It is medical triage. Marcus set down his radio and picked up his medical kit. No, we find another way. There is no other way, insisted Hesera. Mathematics does not lie. Transport capacity is fixed. Marcus opened his kit and pulled out a notebook where he had been tracking everyone's progress. Math isn't everything. Sometimes you have to think differently. How? Asked Jextar. Marcus looked at his notes. 17 patients, all improving, but at different rates. Some were strong enough to help others. Some needed more care, but showed rapid improvement. Some were stable, but weak. We don't evacuate, Marcus announced. We fight. The room fell silent. These were patients who could barely walk, facing an enemy that had conquered star systems. Fight with what? Braktar asked. We have no weapons, no ships, no reinforcements. Marcus closed his notebook. We fight with what we do have. Knowledge, experience, and something the Zephyrians have never encountered before. Which is a field hospital that refuses to give up. Marcus spent the next 2 hours preparing his patients for what he called combat medicine. He taught them how to set up mobile treatment stations using equipment from their packs. He showed them how to treat wounded under pressure. Most importantly, he explained his theory about why the bioweapons had failed against human medical philosophy. The Zephyrians design weapons to defeat technology, Marcus explained, but they can't design weapons to defeat caring. Every time we help someone, we're doing something their weapons weren't built to counter. Dr. Sethka was organizing medical supplies into portable kits. You believe our compassion is a weapon? I believe our compassion is stronger than their hatred, Marcus replied. As the afternoon wore on, long-range sensors detected the Zephyrian fleet entering the system. 18 ships, heavily armed, moving toward the planet's surface. Marcus gathered his patients for a final briefing. When they arrive, some of their people will be wounded. Bioweapons aren't precise tools. They hurt anyone who gets too close, including the people who use them. You want us to treat our enemies? Gliktar asked in disbelief. I want us to treat anyone who needs help, Marcus corrected. That's what medics do. The first Zephyrian dropships landed 2 kilometers from the base just as the sun began to set. Coalition sensors showed hundreds of enemy soldiers spreading out in attack formations. But something strange happened as they approached. Long-range scanners detected that many of the Zephyrian soldiers were showing signs of bioweapon contamination. Their own weapons were poisoning them. They're dying from their own toxins, Dr. Sethka reported, reading scanner data. Their bioweapons affect them too. Marcus was setting up a triage station near the base entrance. Then some of them will need medical attention. Marcus, Jexitar said urgently. They are coming to kill us. Maybe, Marcus replied, laying out his simple medical tools. But some of them are coming here to die, and I won't let anyone die alone if I can help it. The attack began at sunset. Zephyrian soldiers surrounded the base, their bioweapons creating clouds of toxic mist. But as they moved closer, something unexpected happened. Several of the attackers collapsed, overcome by their own weapons. Others began showing symptoms of bioweapon poisoning. The same symptoms Marcus had been treating for 3 days. The first Zephyrian soldier to reach the base entrance was barely conscious, stumbling and falling just outside the door. His companions left him behind, following their hive mind programming that abandoned the weak. Marcus watched through the broken window as the injured soldier lay alone in the dirt, clearly dying from bioweapon exposure. Don't do it, Dr. Sethka warned. It's too dangerous. Marcus picked up his medical kit. It's too dangerous not to. He opened the door and walked out into the toxic air toward the dying enemy soldier. Behind him, his patients watched in amazement as their human medic did what no military manual had ever suggested. He knelt beside his enemy and began providing medical aid. The Zephyrian soldier was barely conscious, his insect-like features twisted in pain. Marcus recognized the symptoms immediately. The same bioweapon effects he had been treating for 3 days. Working quickly, Marcus applied the same basic treatments that had saved his coalition patients. He cleaned the wounds with simple antiseptic, used basic tools to check vital signs, and most importantly, he spoke calmly to the dying soldier. "You're not alone," Marcus said quietly as he worked. "I'm going to help you." The Zephyrian's compound eyes focused on him with confusion. In his entire hive mind existence, no one had ever helped him when he was weak. By the time Marcus carried the enemy soldier back into the base, other Zephyrians had begun to notice. Some continued the attack, but others hesitated, watching their abandoned comrade receive care from those they had come to destroy. "This is either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever seen," Dr. Sethka said as she helped Marcus treat their new patient. Marcus looked up from his work, sweat on his face from the toxic air. "Sometimes there's no difference." The battle around Coleman Base was unlike anything in Coalition military records. Zephyrian soldiers attacked in waves using bioweapons that created clouds of death around the building. But instead of hiding or fighting back, Marcus kept running into the toxic zones to treat anyone who fell. His patients watched in horror and amazement as their human medic repeatedly walked into certain death to help both allies and enemies. Marcus would dash out during lulls in the fighting, drag wounded soldiers back to safety, and begin treatment regardless of which side they fought for. "He is insane," whispered Hesra, the Saurid engineer. "The toxic air should kill him instantly." Dr. Sethka was helping Marcus treat their third Zephyrian patient. "Perhaps his insanity is what keeps him alive. He does not fear the weapons, so they cannot use fear to kill him." Marcus worked steadily through the night, moving between Coalition and Zephyrian patients with equal care. He noticed something crucial as he treated both sides. The bioweapons were designed by the Zephyrians, but they were not immune to their own toxins. The weapons hurt everyone equally, Marcus explained to Dr. Sethka during a brief break. "That's why some Zephyrian soldiers are collapsing. Their own hive mind abandons them when they become weak." "But you do not abandon them," observed Jextar. "I don't abandon anyone," Marcus replied simply. As dawn approached, the pattern of battle began to change. Zephyrian soldiers started hesitating before attacking areas where Marcus was working. Some even began bringing their own wounded toward the base instead of leaving them to die. The first time a healthy Zephyrian soldier approached the base carrying an injured comrade, every Coalition patient reached for weapons that weren't there. "Wait," Marcus said calmly, rising from treating a wounded Canid soldier. He walked toward the approaching enemy. The Zephyrian soldier was larger than Marcus, covered in chitinous armor, and carrying weapons that could level buildings. But he moved slowly, carefully, holding his wounded companion with surprising gentleness. Marcus gestured toward an empty treatment area. "Put him there. I'll help." The healthy soldier hesitated, compound eyes studying Marcus with confusion. In the hive mind, weakness was abandoned immediately. The concept of caring for the injured was completely foreign. Marcus knelt beside the wounded Zephyrian and began his examination. The injured soldier had severe bioweapon poisoning, the same symptoms Marcus had been treating for days. As he worked, Marcus spoke quietly to both Zephyrians. "What are your names?" The question clearly confused them. Hive mind species didn't typically use individual names. "I am Warrior Caste 3847, the healthy one said hesitantly. Marcus looked up from cleaning infected wounds. "That's a job description, not a name." "What do you call yourself when you're alone?" Long silence. Then very quietly, "Zektar. And your friend?" The wounded soldier managed to speak. "HFY." Marcus nodded and continued working. "Nice to meet you both." "I'm Marcus." Dr. Sethka watched this exchange with growing understanding. He is teaching them to be individuals instead of just parts of a group mind. Word of the strange human medic began spreading through the Zephyrian forces. Soldiers reported that their abandoned wounded were being treated by the enemy. Some reported that the enemy medic knew their individual names and asked about their lives before the war. This information caused confusion in the hive mind command structure. Their programming had no response for enemies who helped rather than harmed. By the second day of fighting, Marcus had treated over 50 patients from both sides. The area around Coleman Base had become an unofficial neutral zone where wounded soldiers were brought for care. But the greatest test came when Marcus, encountered a bioweapon he couldn't treat. A young Coalition officer was brought in with symptoms unlike anything Marcus had seen. The toxin was keeping her conscious and aware, while systematically shutting down her nervous system. She could feel everything that was happening but couldn't move or speak. Marcus tried every treatment in his kit. Nothing worked. The officer's eyes stayed alert and terrified as her body slowly failed. "There is nothing we can do," Dr. Sethka said gently. "This weapon is designed to cause maximum suffering. She will be aware until the very end." Marcus looked at the dying officer. She was barely older than him, with the kind of face that suggested she laughed often in peacetime. Her eyes were begging for help he couldn't give. "Then she won't face it alone," Marcus decided. He pulled a chair beside her bed and took her hand. "Can you hear me?" "Blink once for yes," she blinked. "Good, my name is Marcus. I'm going to stay right here with you, okay?" Another blink. Marcus began talking to her. He told her about his home on Earth, about rainy days and his favorite coffee shop. He described sunsets over mountains and the sound of rain on roof. He talked about anything except the war, the base, or what was happening to her body. Other patients gathered around quietly. Jexitar sat on her other side and told stories about Crystal singing on his homeworld. Proctor described the hunting songs of his people. Hesra shared memories of her family's engineering traditions. Even some of the Zephyrian patients joined the vigil. Zektar, who had returned several times with wounded comrades, listened to the stories with obvious fascination. "We do not do this in the hive mind," he said quietly to Marcus. "When one becomes weak, they are forgotten immediately." "That sounds lonely," Marcus replied, still holding the dying officer's hand. "Yes," Zektar said, as if realizing it for the first time. "It is very lonely." The officer died peacefully 6 hours later, surrounded by voices telling her stories about beautiful things from worlds she would never see. Her last expression was not one of fear, but of wonder. Marcus gently closed her eyes and sat quietly for several minutes. "You could not save her," Dr. Sethka said softly. "No," Marcus agreed, "but she didn't die afraid and alone. Sometimes that's the most important save of all." That night, something unprecedented happened. Zektar approached Marcus during the evening medical rounds. "Human Marcus," he said hesitantly, "the hive mind has ordered us to withdraw from this planet." Marcus looked up from treating HFY's recovering wounds. "Why?" "Because our weapons are not working as designed. Too many warriors are choosing to bring wounded here instead of abandoning them. The hive mind says we are becoming infected." "Infected with what?" Zektar struggled to find the right words. "Infected with caring. The hive mind says it is a weakness that will spread to other warriors." Marcus considered this. "What do you think?" "I think—" Zektar paused, clearly fighting against his programming. "I think caring makes us stronger, not weaker. When HFY was dying, I felt something I had never experienced. I felt like his life mattered more than the mission." "That's not infection," Marcus said quietly. "That's friendship." By morning, most of the Zephyrian forces had withdrawn from the planet. But 12 Zephyrian soldiers remained behind, including Zektar and HFY. They had made a choice their hive mind couldn't understand. They had chosen to stay with the strange human medic who had taught them that individual lives mattered. Marcus stood outside the base, watching the last Zephyrian ships disappear into space. Around him, Coalition and Zephyrian patients worked together to repair damage from the battle. His radio crackled with an incoming transmission from Coalition Command. "Corporal Chen, this is Admiral Korth. We've been monitoring the situation. How many enemy prisoners do you have for interrogation?" Marcus looked at Zektar, who was helping Dr. Sethka organize medical supplies. "No prisoners, sir. Just patients." "Corporal, please clarify. Intelligence reports 12 Zephyrian soldiers in your location." "Yes, sir. They're recovering from bioweapon exposure. They should be ready for release in a few days." "Release?" "Corporal, these are enemy combatants." Marcus watched as HFY shared his water ration with a wounded Coalition engineer. "No, sir. They're friends." Coalition Command was in chaos. Reports from Kepler 442b made no sense according to any military manual ever written. A single human medic had somehow turned a plague world into a functioning field hospital, where former enemies worked together to heal each other. "This is impossible," Admiral Korth insisted, reading the latest intelligence reports. "Zephyrians don't abandon their hive mind programming. They can't. Commander Vextar studied the data from multiple sources. Yet 12 of them have remained on the planet for 6 days. They're actively helping Coalition soldiers recover from bioweapon exposure. Dr. Zilanth's tentacles writhed in confusion as she reviewed medical telemetry. The human's treatment methods should not work. He's using primitive techniques against the most advanced bioweapons ever created. But they are working, Vextar pointed out. Survival rates at Coleman Base are 93%. That's higher than our best medical facilities. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from Marcus himself. His message was simple but extraordinary. Coalition Command, this is Corporal Chen. Request immediate transportation for medical conference. We have something important to show you. 6 hours later, a Coalition transport arrived at Kepler 442b. Admiral Korth, Commander Vextar, and Dr. Zilanth approached Coleman Base with a full security escort, expecting to find a dangerous situation requiring immediate containment. Instead, they found something that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. The base had been transformed into a functioning hospital. Coalition and Zephyrian patients worked together in organized teams. Wounded soldiers from both sides received identical care. Most shocking of all, several Zephyrians were actively learning Coalition medical techniques while teaching their own healing knowledge in return. Marcus greeted the delegation at the entrance, looking exhausted but satisfied. His uniform was stained with various colors of alien blood, and his medical kit showed signs of constant use. "Welcome to Coleman Base," he said with a tired smile. "We'd like to show you something." He led them to the main treatment area where Dr. Sethka was teaching a mixed group of Coalition and Zephyrian medics how to identify bioweapon symptoms. The lesson was being translated between 6 different languages with everyone taking notes. "Impossible," Dr. Zilanth whispered. "Zephyrians don't learn from other species. They only follow hive mind directives." "These ones do," Marcus replied. "Once they started thinking as individuals instead of just parts of a group, they became very curious about everything." Admiral Korth studied the scene with obvious discomfort. "Corporal, these are enemy soldiers. They should be contained and interrogated." Zektar overheard the comment and approached the group. His chitinous armor had been modified with Coalition medical insignia, and he carried treatment supplies instead of weapons. "Admiral," Zektar said in carefully practiced standard, "I was enemy soldier 6 days ago. Now I am student of healing. Marcus taught me that helping others is stronger than hurting others. You abandoned your hive mind programming," Dr. Zilanth accused. "That should be impossible for your species." Zektar considered this. "Marcus showed me I was individual person, not just part of group. Once I understood this, hive mind commands became suggestions. I could choose to follow them or not." Commander Vextar's reptilian features showed deep confusion. "But why choose to stay with enemies?" "Not enemies," corrected HFY, approaching with an armload of medical supplies. "Friends, family. Marcus says family is people who care about you when you are weak." The Coalition leaders exchanged glances. This was far beyond anything their psychological profiles had predicted. Marcus led them to his makeshift office where he had been documenting his discoveries about bioweapon treatment. His notes were written in simple language, illustrated with basic diagrams, but the implications were staggering. "The bioweapons are designed to defeat advanced technology," Marcus explained. "They adapt to energy-based healing, quantum cellular repair, any sophisticated medical intervention. But they can't adapt to basic care and emotional support." Dr. Zilanth examined his treatment protocols. "These methods are thousands of years old, primitive by any standard." "Old doesn't mean wrong," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the simplest approach is the most effective." "But how do you explain the psychological changes in the Zephyrians?" Admiral Korth demanded. "Hive mind species don't develop individual personalities." Marcus gestured toward the treatment area, where Zektar was helping a wounded Coalition engineer learn to walk again. "I think they always had individual personalities. The hive mind just didn't allow them to express them." "That's impossible," Dr. Zilanth insisted, "is it?" Marcus asked. "When Zektar brought wounded friends here, he was making individual choices based on compassion. The hive mind never programmed compassion because they thought it was weakness." Commander Vextar was beginning to understand. "You're saying their own biology worked against their programming once they experienced individual caring." "I'm saying everyone wants to be cared about when they're hurt and scared," Marcus replied simply. Once the Zephyrians experienced that, they couldn't go back to abandoning their wounded. The real revelation came when Marcus introduced them to his most recent patient. In a quiet corner of the medical bay, a severely injured Zephyrian lay connected to Coalition life support equipment. This was no ordinary soldier. The pattern of his carapace and the complexity of his biomodifications indicated high command rank. This is Sub-Commander Vexkol, Marcus explained. He was leading the assault when he collapsed from bioweapon poisoning. His own forces left him to die because he showed weakness. Admiral Korth stared at the unconscious Zephyrian. This is a high-value intelligence target. He should be in maximum security containment. He should be in medical care, Marcus corrected, which is what he's getting. Dr. Zilanth ran a scan of the sub-commander's condition. He's barely alive. Brain activity minimal. Even if he recovers physically, the psychological trauma of being abandoned by his hive mind will likely leave him catatonic. Maybe, Marcus said, but when he wakes up, he won't be alone. Zektar and HFY take turns sitting with him. They tell him stories about their homeworld, about the good things they remember from before the war. Why would they do that for a superior officer who failed them? Marcus looked at Zektar, who was adjusting the sub-commander's IV drip with practiced care. Because that's what friends do. The breakthrough came 2 days later. Sub-Commander Vexkol regained consciousness to find Zektar reading him technical manuals about Coalition medical procedures. Not interrogating him, not demanding information, just sharing knowledge. Why are you here? The sub-commander asked weakly. Because Marcus taught us that no one should wake up alone and afraid, Zektar replied. You are not sub-commander anymore. Hive mind abandoned you, but you are still Zekvar, which is name you chose for yourself when you were young. The sub-commander's compound eyes showed confusion. You remember my individual name? I remember many things now that I am person instead of just warrior caste number, Zektar said. Would you like to remember too? What happened next changed everything. Sub-Commander Vexkol, highest-ranking Zephyrian ever captured by Coalition forces, began to cry. Not from pain or fear, but from the overwhelming realization that someone cared enough to remember who he was before the war. I had forgotten, he whispered. I had forgotten I was ever anything but a weapon. Marcus entered the treatment area as Zektar helped the sub-commander sit up slowly. How are you feeling, Zekvar? Like a person who has been sleeping for a very long time, the former sub-commander replied. The intelligence implications were enormous, but what mattered more to Marcus was that patient number 300 was going to survive with his dignity intact. Coalition Command ultimately faced a choice they had never imagined making. They could treat the Zephyrian defectors as prisoners and intelligence assets, or they could accept Marcus's radical proposal to create the first interspecies medical corps in galactic history. You're suggesting we train our enemies to be doctors, Admiral Korth summarized during the final briefing. I'm suggesting we train people to be healers, Marcus corrected. The war started because both sides saw each other as enemies instead of people. Medical work teaches you that everyone hurts the same way, everyone bleeds the same color. Everyone wants to go home to their families. Dr. Zilanth, who had spent days learning Marcus's simple treatment methods, finally understood. You're not just treating bioweapon symptoms. You're treating the psychological wounds that make war seem necessary. Marcus nodded. Heal enough people on both sides, and eventually they stop seeing each other as enemies. 6 months later, the Marcus Chen medical protocol was being taught at Coalition medical schools across the galaxy. The basic principles were simple enough that any species could learn them. Treat the whole person, not just the disease. Never abandon a patient. Remember that healing requires both physical treatment and emotional support. The war with the Zephyrians ended not through military victory, but through medical diplomacy. As more Zephyrian soldiers experienced individual care and began thinking as people rather than weapons, the hive mind programming began breaking down across their entire species.